everyone, this is Kyle coming at you live with another video reviewing, well, today we're going to review the Fusion by PowerA Fusion Pro 2 wired controller. Now, this particular remote control I've seen advertised online by several different YouTube channels as being not necessarily worth the price point. But with that said, this is still going to run you cheaper than the Elite Series 2 controller by Microsoft. And you can kind of make that decision for yourself based on if that is worth the price. But this retails for around about, with tax included in the United States, it ran me about 90 bucks. 95, basically estimated, just rounding up a little bit. And I purchased this from Best Buy. So it had a 15-day warranty. I'm on day number 10 with this remote, and so far I've had no issues, so I don't see myself returning it, but having that period of time to test it out and play with it has been nice. So shout out to Best Buy for that particular return policy. I think that gives quite a bit of time to at least explore the remote, figure out if there are any manufacturing issues. And the reason that I'm doing this video is also because I recently purchased a Wolverine Tournament Edition controller by Razer and had the opposite situation happen where, while their customer service was very kind and considerate when I had mentioned that the controller I bought for a pretty good deal, about $75 with a gift card, so definitely had a sale going on. Normally it retails at $120. I bought it from the Microsoft store for $80 with tax and everything, basically. And that particular remote, not even a full week passed before I noticed that the right thumbstick was off center, so it would actually lean a little bit to the left, which in first person shooters is a huge problem, because I would notice in Halo I'd be turning to the right, be super slow, as opposed to the left I'd be turning at a rapid speed. Wasn't that great because it had some back buttons. There were 4 additional buttons on the back. They weren't paddles, and I preferred that arrangement as opposed to this, and we'll get into the paddles on this remote. But one of those I had basically had to refunction for sensitivity. You could refunction one of the buttons to make it where you could have a faster look sensitivity in the middle of the game, as opposed to changing it in your settings. A cool feature, great feature on a remote, mind you, if the remote itself was working properly. Spent about 2 weeks trying to talk to Razer, getting through their customer service, and finally when they reached the point of saying, okay, it does look like this may have a manufacturing issue, and I'll include the videos showing what I was talking about so you can kind of see what I submitted to them. They finally said, oh, you know what, this does look defective. Contact Microsoft and have them, complete the refund and return process. And I was a little bit frustrated because that would have been a nice answer just to know from the get-go. But again, as the consumer, I could have also looked into the purchasing policies for Microsoft. It just, the whole point of me contacting customer service would have been nice if they just said, hey, we at Razer see that you're having an issue. Before we get into this troubleshooting, before we make you send all this documentation and video evidence over, why don't you just consider returning the remote? And maybe there's reasons for that. All that to say, as a purchase from Razer, and a good company, I was just a little bit disappointed because out the box, and it seems like that's not a very often talked about issue online with that controller. I see a lot of good reviews for the Tournament Edition remote and the Ultimate Edition remote, but I see a lot of people also talk about thumbstick drift or thumbstick issues or being off center, and why that hasn't impacted the reviews online is a big question mark for me, because to me that is a huge mark against those controllers if right out the box when you purchase them they're not working as intended, and you have to spend going through 2 or 3 with your warranty before you get one that actually works. I think that's a huge problem that isn't talked about enough with Razer products, particularly with the Tournament Edition remote. So with that rant out of the way, I'll include a quick little video before we jump into the review for this remote, just detailing again some of those off-centering issues so you can get a clearer picture for what I'm talking about. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the unboxing, or I should say re-unboxing for this remote. I've already opened it, but I'm going to show you it from the get-go if you were just opening it for the first time. So on the side, not too much except for this nice little matte black and then a glossy black lettering that says Fusion. And then you'll notice here, designed for Xbox Series X and S and Xbox One. I mean, a lot of remotes, I guess these days, are going to be compatible with multiple devices, so I don't know how much of a selling point this is for you, but nice to know that it would work on several different systems. I mean, essentially all Microsoft products are kind of talking to each other at this point, so again, no surprise there. Includes the remote, the Pro Pack. See if I can zoom on this a little bit more clear. Doesn't look like it wants to zoom, but I'll read out some of these. The Fusion Pro wired controller, Pro Pack with paddles, the 2 extra analog sticks, swappable faceplate, the storage case, the braided cable, and the user guide. Go to the top here, nothing much there, just your little retail tab. And then we'll go to the back, and it just shows some of the more specs. The mappable pack, which you can remove these paddles in the pack itself. The trigger locks, which I don't really use, but you have 3 of them there. I don't notice too much of a difference between using them and don't. The grip, I will say this feels very comfortable in the faceplate. So there's a white one and a black one. I put the white one on for this review, but you'll see what that looks like. And the case is very nice. You know, another pro to this compared to the tournament edition, you can swap the faceplate and has this very nice case. And for $90, I was very impressed with the quality. To me, $90 for a programmable controller without a case wouldn't seem to be that big of a deal, but we'll go ahead and open this up so you can see what it looks like. So we open up the case. The first thing you're going to see is the remote, and then you're going to see this little side flap here, which holds the faceplate and has 2 holes for the thumbsticks to point out of. So let's take a look at the faceplate first. I think this is one of the cooler features, and one that I may take advantage of in the future by maybe getting some extra faceplates if they have them of different colors. I'm sure they do, but I'll find that out. These do have friction rings, which I hear there's no big difference between using them versus not. There's a different texturing on this too. This has a more rubber finish to it, which you're going to see is similar to the back of the remote, has these rubber finishes. And the front of the white face is almost, I wouldn't say it's glossy, somewhere between matte and glossy. But we'll take that off real quick. So as you can see, you can swap out some of these components, and you can put this faceplate on for a different look, which I think looks really clean. I enjoy the black one, but I will say, like, if you're someone like me, which, you know, unfortunately my fingers can get a little bit oily and sweaty real quick, especially in first-person shooters, you can go back to that white one and you'll not have to worry about that marking up your black faceplate. But both are good. You saw how quick that was. It's magnetic, it sticks on, I have no issues with it. A lot of people I see give this controller some flack because of these 2 buttons here. This essentially just allows you to plug in a microphone, which honestly, if you're using a PC, you have a gaming rig or laptop, you're probably plugging in your microphone to that computer anyways, but if not, this does give you another option. So it's nice to have that option to plug in, as you would with the you know, Series S controller for Xbox. This does mimic a lot of the design of that one, but what it does have on top of that is this mute button, so you can press down on that, you can lower or raise the volume. But again, a lot of headsets are going to have that built in anyways, so I understand the people that say that this is a wasted space, or rather a wasted button, something else could have been used here. I don't think it's all that bad. I mean, it's easy enough to ignore if you're not going to use it, so I would just say, if you're going to use it, cool. If not, you can just pretty much ignore it. It doesn't take up that much room. And you know, it might just be blank space on a typical Pro controller anyways, so better to have it than not have it, I suppose. This is a share button, which is apparently more popular on the Xbox Series X model consoles and remotes that they're coming out with. I don't find that it works very well for me. I mean, there's a way I'm sure you can get it to work better than how I've experienced it, and I'm thinking maybe it works better on console. For me, this has been trouble getting this to work as intended on PC. So You can tell me in the comments, maybe that's a PC versus console issue. Particularly, I'm doing this review with PC gaming in mind, and I should have prefaced the video with that. So for PC, honestly, if you press the Xbox button, it'll bring up where you can do a 30-second rewind or however you want to clip it, and it has the recording button. You can just press the home button for that. I don't see that this button was very necessary to put in, but it's standard on a lot of new Xbox remotes, Microsoft branded ones, so I don't know why that was included. I think this feels almost more unnecessary than this. They're both not very important. So now that we talked about the not important buttons, let's talk about the other stuff. You have your basic X, A, B, Y, all that's the same, directional pad. You can't swap out the directional pad or these buttons, and these have a very, just a typical remote feel. It's not very clicky, but the pressure is fine. I will say the Tournament Edition has a nicer feel to this. The Tournament Edition one feels as if you can just click. It's like a mouse click almost. These are just going to be like your standard remote control buttons. Nothing special about them. Green friction rings here. And then these are the swappable thumbsticks. So you can see here, I'm using the two standard ones that it comes with. So they just mimic the typical ones you'll find on a Series S controller. But I'll show you real quick the other two that it comes with. You have this round tip one, which you can use. A lot of people say not to use it for the right thumbstick if you're, gaming and you want some accuracy with your guns, snipers. I don't find that there's too much of an issue with it. It's very comfortable, but you can use it for your left stick if you don't use it for your right. And then this one is a lot taller. So this taller stick, you'll notice the height difference here, if I can get it to line up properly. Basically, this can help you with accuracy, and when you put there's these gaming grips you can get. You can put one of those on top. Can help with precision weapons in FPS shooters. To me, I just prefer using the standard for most games, but you can play with them, and I appreciate that they include these. They did not have to do that. But the other thing that I like about that is how easy it is just to pop these off and swap them. So just as an example, I'll pop off the right thumbstick here, and just with a little bit of pressure, we got it off. You can see that there. And you can see that as simple as it was to take off, we can pop on. We'll put the more heightened precision accurate one on here. Just make sure that you're aligned properly so when you snap it down, it doesn't break any internal components. Because there is a longer side here. You'll notice it's an oval shape, so you want to align that properly with the shape of the pin. And as we put that on top, snap it down, and that's it. Give it a good click, make sure it's in there. And as you can see, the height is substantially increased. And I might just play with it like that for a little bit. So for the sake of this review, just to keep us going along, I'll just leave that there for now. But what's nice is you can actually swap these out. I would have preferred something like that with the Tournament Edition because honestly, the inability to swap things out meant that I couldn't do anything with my thumbstick. Messing with that would have voided my warranty. And if anything was off center, I didn't have the option to go in and play around with it. This right out of the box allows you some functionality in terms of swapping thumbsticks, playing around with it, and just trying to get things more precise with different games. I like that a lot. There may be comments that people make about durability with that, how long this controller will last because of the swapping, but the capacity to have it as opposed to not, and being able to remove sort of the front off and play around with some of the insides, I think is a huge advantage for this remote. So now we'll go over and look at the paddles. The paddles here are very familiar to those who have owned an Elite Series remote. The 1 or 2, you're going to notice that this is pretty similar to that. Or if you've owned the Fusion Power A Pro 1, the first model of this remote, which retails for about $60, you'll notice that it looks pretty similar too. I think there's been some slight changes, but honestly, I've seen some reviewers give these some flack too, because I'll go ahead and push this off. There's this button here where you can just remove it. Very easy. Put the remote down for now. But this is a plastic case which clips on, has the connector, and these are actually put in magnetically with a little clip too. So this metallic piece with this plastic piece, I see that there's people that say durability again is a concern, that if you were to put this in wrong or you're playing a high intense game and it starts to fall out and you mash it and maybe it bends the wrong way, you could break the plastic. But quite honestly, if you're buying a pro controller, you're probably not button mashing, or let's hope you're not, because that's not good for a couple of reasons, mental health included. But this plastic is, of course, not going to be durable in the same way that something metal or something metal to metal might be, metal to rubber. So this metal to plastic, I'm sure over time will wear, but the clicking is nice. And personally for me, when I have this put in, I have sometimes some issues with the, let me just get it in real quick here and then I'll finish my thought. Also a helicopter, so I'll let the helicopter fly by too, so that works out perfectly. So clicked it back in, simple as that. But the spacing, you'll notice these are pretty close to each other. And that spacing can be problematic when you're playing games like Halo, because I often get confused and I'll be using one to zoom in, but thinking I'm using the flashlight instead of the zoom in, and suddenly I'm dead because I didn't zoom in at the right time, yada yada. And that's going to be par for the course with, I think, mappable buttons, especially with paddles. You could get a remote with any number of buttons. The Tournament Edition, I liked the layout a little bit more, but even with that one, the way those buttons rest in your hand, it's a little different because they use 2 buttons where these 4 paddles would be, and then they add 2 extra buttons in between your bumper and your throttle. I'm blanking on a name. Roast me in the comments for that. Basically, you have 3 buttons on each side here instead. And I found it harder to use those buttons, whereas with this, I find it more confusing to match these all the same. So there's drawbacks, right? There's always going to be drawbacks with controller geography when you're including more buttons than, say, your run-of-the-mill Xbox 360 or even OG Xbox remote. That's just the way of the game, and it's really just more of what is going to be the best comfort for you. I find the way that this sits in my hands to be something that I can learn, because notice how when you're holding a controller, if you're mapping it with all of your hands on particular buttons, this is actually the most efficient way to play, because your bumpers are used with your index fingers, your middle, use your throttles, and then these pinky, ring finger are on the paddles. It allows for you to do some pretty crazy things, such as, like I said, I have one of these to zoom in, swap weapons, another one for another game is jump. You can do quite a bit with this, and the nice thing too with the Fusion Pro, you can do that button mapping without using software. The Tournament Edition remote and Wolverine Razer, they have a software that you can use to do that, which the software is nice, don't get me wrong, but you don't need to use that. And what's nice about this is you don't need to download any software. You basically, whenever you need to map something, you hold that particular button down, the button starts to blink here, or this little light blinks here, and then you press the button you want to map that to. So I think that's pretty efficient. It's a better use of time, I think, having to go around using software. It's like you're going to have that software on your console and your PC. Maybe there's a way to do it manually in the same way with the Fusion Pro, but I just find that you don't need to do that. This just saves you some time. It's nice. I like that feature. But without further ado, I'll also include some gameplay clips so you can see what it's like with me playing with the Fusion Pro 2. One small gripe, well, before I get into the gripe, let me show you the braided cable. So the cable is nice, and you'll find this to be pretty standard with some professional remotes too. The braided cable, it's just going to last longer, which is great. And if you're not playing with paddles, you noticed how I could swap those out and just take them off completely. There's a back panel that you can put on in place of this, which is nice. So you don't have to use the paddles. So honestly, if you just even want a new remote, this could be a really good option for you. Without even having the paddles, you just have the options and the accessories. And it's nice to just have more in case you want to get more competitive in the future. So that about does it for the review portion of this video with the remote. And now I'll swap over to gameplay so you can at least see a little bit, and I'll include a little bit of commentary. But thanks for watching. Hopefully this was helpful for some of you. And again, if you have questions about the Fusion Pro 2 wired controller by PowerA, please drop some comments, give a like and subscribe if you can, and I'll see you in the next video. So thank you and take care.
Grapple shot obtained.
Mark down!
Check.
Lost a teammate. Did some damage. Enemies down.
Kill. Grand slam. Triple kill.